What is up? Welcome to another edition of the NFL Fantasy Football Podcast. It's me, your man, MG Marcas Grant, socially distancing and masking when and where possible. And we have reached the halfway point. I guess we're beyond the halfway point of our Fantasy Camp series. We finished the AFC last week, and big thanks to all my guests who jumped in to help me break down the AFC division. So, by process of elimination, that means we start the NFC today. So, we'll go through the 4 NFC divisions over the next couple of weeks. I have a bunch of very exciting guests lined up for that. I will get to my guests today in just a moment as we talk about the NFC East, which perfect timing. Our faithful producer, Senior Edward L. Murphy, Esquire, also noted Giants fan, is back from vacation. So, Murph, just in time. Welcome back. How was the vacay?
It was good. Surprisingly, I'm like the only person who lives in LA to get more suntan in New York City than fly back with one. But yeah, after a while of just like sitting outside my backyard and smoking meat on the smoker and sitting in the pool, I'm like, I should probably do something again with my life. So flew back. Good to be here working, and like you said, it's a great episode to start back on with NFC East.
Yeah, instead of a lot of people take a gap year like in college, you kind of took a gap week this summer, I guess.
We've been talking about it weekly on this show. Is like sometimes you just need to exhale and find the positives, what's going on during this. And it's like, as long as you're in your bubble of like your backyard and not seeing what's going on in the outside world and you're just enjoying life, it's not so bad. But
yeah.
Like I said, it is good to be back. And I mean, sports are on for the time being, which
for
is
now
really good. So I'm trying to enjoy. It's a day by day process to enjoy stuff.
Yeah, no, absolutely understandable. So all right, let's get to our guest. A couple of guys that I really enjoy talking fantasy sports with. Start with a guy that you can find him over at Big Guy Fantasy Sports. He also publishes the Fantasy Football Consistency Guide. It is out now on Amazon. You can go get it. Also, one of the brains behind the Kings Classic Fantasy League that I've been fortunate enough to participate in since its inception a couple of years ago. It was this gentleman along with Brad Evans who helped put it together. And excited to welcome to the show Bob Long, who is live from Canton, Ohio, where, Bob, I know normally we're getting busy and it's like kind of a hive of activity. Unfortunately, this year it's not going to be the same in Canton.
It is not. No Hall of Fame, no Hall of Fame event, no Hall of Fame game, no Hall of Fame parade. It's as I said off the air, it's a big kick in the nuts to Canton, Ohio, because it's big revenue for us. But Marcus, thank you for having me on here. Always a pleasure to see you. Love the fact you've been coming in the last couple of years to represent NFL.com and the Kings Classic. And sadly, we have to do it online this year, but we're still doing it. We're still moving forward and looking forward to that. We expanded the league this year and have a division now with 7 international sites.
Wow.
Brazil, Australia, Germany, UK, Canada, Mexico. So we're excited about that. That's going to be half of our new Dawson division, Len Dawson division.
Wow.
With some other guys we should have had in the past, Evan Silva and those kind of guys. So we're expanding, and so we're taking it international this time.
That's awesome. That's very cool. I'm glad to be a part of it. I'm sad that we won't be able to close down the Buffalo Wild Wings this year.
Amen to that.
That has become a tradition unlike any other. So B-Dubs, you're gonna have to wait a year.
Yeah.
And then we'll be back. We'll swoop down upon them. Other guests, you are familiar with this gentleman because he has been on this show plenty of times. Not only a friend of the program, just a friend in general, one of these smart, good guys in this industry. You know him over from Football Diehards, also from Sirius XM Radio. It is our good friend, Bob Harris. And Bob, I have to say that you, to this show, are sort of like Steve Martin hosting SNL at this point. Like, you need like your own smoking jacket, your own like waiting room. You need all that stuff.
Yeah, I totally do. And look, I love coming on with you guys. Enjoy every chance I have to talk to you, Marcus. Eddie is becoming a part of the family. So, yeah, this is great. And this is, I know we talk about the social distancing. I mean, for me, this is the norm, right? I mean, the going places and being around people is a different part. So I will miss that opportunity. One of the great things about the Kings Classic each year is going and getting FaceTime and, personal connections with people that we, look, we all talk amongst ourselves on the electronic platforms and stuff, but that personal time together is always great. So I'm sad for missing out on that, but kind of normal for me.
Yeah, I get it. So, like I said, hopefully a year from now, things will be back closer to normal, and we can all, we can all fellowship in person again. That would be fantastic. In the meantime, let's talk some NFC East football, shall we? As always, I got my big questions for each team. We'll do some superlatives, kind of best and worsts of the division, and then I always like to finish out with some fun either or questions to wrap the things up. So let's start with the Dallas Cowboys. And I'm gonna throw this out here to you, Long, first. And Harris, if you got, I have to remember to use last names. So if I just say Bob, this is going to get really confusing. So,
Right, I got it.
So, Long, how do you feel about Amari Cooper? And I ask that because he's a guy who gets drafted as a top 10, finishes in the top 10, but man, those roller coaster weeks seem really hard to deal with. Is that something you're factoring in when you're looking at Amari Cooper?
Oh, yeah. I mean, let's be honest. You know that my stuff's all about the consistency of the player in fantasy football, and nobody is as inconsistent as we nicknamed him the fantasy locust, Amari Cooper. Last year, Michael Gallup was more consistent, 64% versus 63%. And again, he was top 10 in points, but 63% consistency. That puts him like 22nd in wide receivers. And here's the thing. That's the best season he's had in his career consistency-wise. So I just can't draft this guy ever, especially when he's going as a top 12.
Harris, he mentioned Michael Gallup, and I feel like I referred earlier this offseason to Michael Gallup as the Jan Brady of fantasy football because, everybody talks about Amari Cooper. Everybody talks about CeeDee Lamb. And I feel like, Michael Gallup doesn't get maybe as much attention as maybe he should be. Or am I wrong? Is he just going to be kind of the third wheel there in Dallas?
And in a lot of cases, and we may talk about this with the Giants as well, the most expensive component is not the component I want. It's the cheaper component. In this case, Lamb is not yet as expensive as Gallup, but it's closer than it should be. You look at last season, 1,100 yards, 16.8 yards per reception. It was only Kenny Golladay and Mike Evans with 100 targets had more yards per catch than Michael Gallup. And Gallup is the guy that Dak Prescott looks to when he's in trouble, right? When he's under pressure. No, I don't think any other receiver had more touchdowns when their quarterback was under pressure than Michael Gallup. So missed a couple games. The totals were limited. Averaged 15.2 fantasy points per game, tied Calvin Ridley for 18th most among wide receivers. Totally disrespected is this Michael Gallup fellow.
That's how I feel. I absolutely feel that way. And I've been trying to grab him in as many spots as I possibly can because I still think there's a pretty high ceiling for him there. So Long, we've got all these receivers, got all these pass catchers in Dallas. I know Dak was fantastic last year. He's still kind of being drafted as maybe the third or fourth quarterback off the board. What would have to happen, and is it possible for Dak to finish this year potentially as the QB1 ahead of, say, Mahomes and Lamar Jackson?
Well, if we're going on total points, then that's certainly the key here. Here's the thing. If he matches last season, just matches it, and ends up second total points, he was 40, 50 points behind Lamar Jackson. If Lamar Jackson misses 3 or 4 games due to injury, and when you run that much, that's always a possibility. In same way with Mahomes, he could be the number one guy if he can just stay in that same realm he was going at last year. He could be the number one overall quarterback. I think it has to take an injury, a few games here or there for Mahomes and LJ, but I think he could be done.
All right. So then we talk about the other pass catchers, right? Blake Jarwin is a guy that has sort of kind of crept on the radar. Harris, is he ready to make the leap? Is he really the sleeper that we all think he is?
But you don't have to pay to find out. So there's that. He's still going absurdly late. And look, I think we always joke about on the Football Diehards podcast, the sea of mediocrity that is the tight end pool and how shallow it is. You don't need your water wings. You can just wade on in and kind of get shin deep. And so this season, it just seems like it's so there's so much depth of guys with some upside. And Jarwin's on that list. And so if you're drafting him as a tight end too, and you're not that worried about the production, you're ready to move on and stream quickly, or if you're doing a late flyer in best ball, there's a lot of targets were vacated with Witten gone, and so I can see where he might get something done. I'm not investing a ton, but again, the price is right.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, like the times I've drafted him, it literally is, last pick or second to last pick. I mean, it's tail end of the draft. And my argument has been that Jason Witten was the tight end 11, and basically all he did was catch the ball and fall down, right? And I know that probably says more about the tight end position than it does necessarily about what Jason Witten did last year. But I'd like to believe that Blake Jarwin, being younger and a little more agile, can do more than just catch the ball and fall down. So I'm sort of using that. And again, like you said, the draft Marcus, equity, it's almost none.
Yeah, I think, Marcus, the thing is there's a ton of Jarwins out there, right? There's a lot of guys that you could take in that same race. So it's kind of a personal preference. If you think that offense is your choice. I mean, whether it's Jack Doyle, Jonnu Smith, Mike Gesicki, I mean, in that same range of guys, and I mean, I'm probably getting up above that grade with Gesicki because he seems to be more of a darling. But there are a handful of players you could pick with that late tight end pick that would get you that would satisfy your cravings.
Yeah, I mean, Jonnu Smith is another name that I've thrown some darts at more than once in this draft season.
Well, like you said, Bob, Jack Doyle is a perfect example of a guy who, just 3 years ago was top 10 in both total points and consistency, and that was before Ebron. Now Ebron's gone, but Jarwin last year only 19% consistent, only 3 games over the the clutch factor in our rating, and that was week 1, 9, and 13. So he never even put 2 games together. So that's why I'm kind of staying away. And I feel like guys like Jack Doyle is a much better choice that late versus a Jarwin. But, like you said, maybe he kicks it up this year.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, again, like Harris said, I mean, the draft price is right.
Right.
If it doesn't work out, you haven't really hamstrung yourself all right much necessarily. All right, this is the part that Eddie is tuning in for. It is let's talk about the Giants. And I'll start with you, Harris. Are you buying into the Daniel Jones hype? And I guess I mean that in a fantasy perspective, to the point that will he have enough usable weeks that he'll be worth taking a swing at in drafts?
Yeah, if the question is, I'm buying into the hype so damn much. I'm creating the hype, so I'm not buying into it. I am the engineer of this train. You are only the conductor, Mark. I mean, this is my, and I get the issues, right? Pittsburgh, Chicago, San Francisco, and the Rams to start the season. It's going to be a tough road. Or is it? I mean, early on in the season, we don't know what the hell's going on. Teams aren't coming together under the best of circumstances, right? These are not the best of circumstances. So these are tough defenses, yes. Is that scaring me off of Daniel Jones? Probably irrationally, no. Because I am all in on this. Look, I love the upside last year, right? And that was without all the weapons available full time. I mean, there was stretches without Golden Tate, stretches without Sterling Shepard, stretches without Saquon Barkley, stretches without Evan Ingram. I like the new coach, this judge guy. It impresses me. I like the demeanor. I like the way he comes in. Jason Garrett, as the offensive coordinator, has had a hand in developing at least one good quarterback I could think of. His name was Tony Romo. So, look, I like all this. The Week 16 game against Baltimore is a little bit worrisome too. But I think Daniel Jones, you look at the high end, the ceiling he demonstrated last year. I think that's what we're hoping for. And if you're looking to draft that guy, every year we want. Why did Lamar Jackson win you titles last year, Marcus? Not because he was the best player in fantasy football. That was part of it, but because you drafted him in the double-digit rounds. I'm looking for this year's guy that I'm drafting in double-digit rounds, or certainly late single digits, who might come on enough to win me the title. And that's why the hype for me for Daniel Jones. And I'm overplaying the hype angle. I just like him a lot. But those are the reasons why.
Have we gotten spoiled, by the way? I mean, you mentioned last year, right? Everybody who got Lamar Jackson late ends up with a gym. 2 years ago, it was everybody who got Patrick Mahomes late. You end up with a gym. Have we gotten conditioned maybe to looking for something that
yes
is a really hard standard to live up to?
Yes, an impossible standard, right? I mean, like that's this year. It's gotten to the point where Kyler Murray, he's already priced up for that very reason. I mean, we have that expectation is he's going to be that next guy, and we're already paying for it. So I want to pay for the price for the guy who has at least a chance to be that guy, even if he's not.
I blame myself for some of the Kyler Murray hype. I was shoveling coal on that hype train engine probably back in like December or January. So I'll take some of that blame for that one right there. So obviously we talk about Daniel Jones. We got to talk about the pass catchers and Long. I mean, the Darius Slayton hype has been pretty loud lately. Are you buying into this hype especially in terms of like where you have to get him now? Like I've seen him go in like this. I've taken him in the 7th round in mock drafts. I mean, is that hype, has it gotten out of control now?
Well, I think it's a little too high. In fact, I think the one person that they should be hyping that they're not, and the one that I'm hyping, because of course I'm all about consistency, and this guy was 82% consistent after he came back last year, and that's Golden Tate. Mm-hmm. And Golden Tate was, we talked about Daniel Jones, his consistency as a quarterback, not very good, 38%. But his receivers with Darius Slayton, that second half of the year, where he, was pretty much on par with him. As I said, Golden Tate, Sterling Shepard becomes kind of the third wheel now. But both of those guys, I'm very high on Tate because I can get Tate 3 or 4 or 5 rounds later than Darius Slayton. And so I'm getting him as my wide receiver 5 or 6, perfect spot. And I think he's going to continue. He had a great chemistry with him last year. But the one thing with Slayton that scares me a little bit is, even though he had that nice stretch there between week 9 through week 14 or 15, was that in that time frame, 2 games totaled 67 points. That's 40% of his total points for the year of 170. So that kind of scares me. He's like, yeah, there is some consistency there in a short time frame, but there was 2 really big games that gives him that total points. That's why I'm not buying into the hype on him, but I am buying the hype on Tate.
All right. I mean, I feel like with Tate, what hurts him, and it has nothing to do with Golden Tate. It has everything to do with us as fantasy folks, is that we always tend to look young, right? We tend to skew younger, look for, the quote unquote upside. Right. And Golden Tate is a name like, we know Golden Tate, right? He's McDonald's. We've seen him a million times. We've seen him everywhere. And look, man, I still love chicken McNuggets. Like they're still fine. Yeah. But like it's not like when the McRib comes out. And I feel like Darius Slayton is sort of the McRib.
There you go.
And Golden Tate is chicken nuggets, right? Like yeah, that wasn't maybe not the best analogy, but I'm working on the fly here. Leave me alone. Harris, with Evan Ingram here, I mean, obviously we know what he can be. The issue for him has been health. How are you approaching him in drafts, if you're even approaching him at all at this point?
I am injury agnostic. Hell, I still draft Tyler Eifert. I don't care. Injury history means nothing to me, right? What means something to me is price. And at this point, talked to our friend Rich Rebar from Sharp Football the other day, who I met in human form at Bob's event, the Midwest Fantasy Football Expo last year, which was great, associated with the Kings Classic. But and listening to him, and this has been kind of his thing a couple of years. If you miss out on that top tier, which is basically 2 guys, if you miss out on the Kittle and Kelsey portion of this thing, I'll still invest in the Andrews Ertz if the price is right, if I feel comfortable with it, or if my roster construction is going that way. But that mid-range, I don't want anything to do with. But they're kind of almost turning into 10-foot pole guys. I wouldn't touch them with Eddies. And so that's the issue for me. He's in that range of guys, and Darren Waller is there. Ertz is trying to get there. There's a whole batch of guys that I'd rather wait for later. And there's those really cheap upside guys we talked about, whether you're looking at the Noah Fants, the Mike Gesicki's, or that range of players. The Jack Doyle is the guy that I've been targeting, as Bob mentioned, for the reasons he mentioned. But and he's even cheaper. But I'm just staying away from that mid tier. And Evan Ingram is a big part of that. I could sit here and say it's because I'm afraid he gets hurt, but it's not. I'm not afraid of anyone getting hurt. They're all going to get hurt. Deal with it.
Yeah, I will say this. I've said this repeatedly on this show, that the drafts I felt best about are the ones where I either go early for a tight end and get a Kittle or a Kelsey, or I wait and I'm getting a Gesicki, a Fant, a Jonnu Smith. It's when I go in that mid range that I look at the rest of the roster and I'm just kind of like I'm just not inspired by it. So I completely understand that. Over to Philadelphia. And now Bob Harris and I have sort of talked about this. We talked about this on your Sirius show with Mike Dempsey. So I'm going to ask you, Long, about this. What is the ceiling, and how do you feel about Miles Sanders? And I sort of ask it because I was always afraid that the Eagles were going to bring somebody else in, that they were going to sign a free agent, whether it's Devontae Freeman or somebody else. I feel like a lot of that threat has passed now. Maybe not completely gone, but it's passed now that we're into training camp. So can you feel more comfortable about Miles Sanders getting a large role there in Philadelphia right now?
I can. And if you look at the last 6 games of last year and just extrapolate that over a season, that'd be over 303 points. That would put him in 5th place. That to me is a ceiling. It's pretty high, but he did it the last 6 games. So if he can stay healthy, team stays focused with him as the main guy, certainly can do it. But I'd even be comfortable at 245 points, which would put him 10th. So that's, not a huge not a huge ceiling, but definitely he can be a top 10 back. There's no question about it. He's being drafted as one. I haven't had a lot of shares of him. Usually just where I'm picking, he either goes early or goes late. But yeah, I think he certainly has the potential, and his last 6 games showed it last year.
Yeah, I mean, I love his talent. I just have this nagging feeling that Doug Peterson is going to, throw a wrench in this whole thing again. And then we're going to see Boston Scott getting, key carries or key touches. And we're all
or Devonta Freeman. Where is that guy?
Right. Like, I mean, there's still a chance that he could sign somewhere, right? Like he could show up in Philadelphia and really just gum up the whole works. So that sort of worries me. Harris, which of these Eagles receivers do you believe in the most? I mean, they got a lot of guys there, but I feel like none of them are getting anybody excited right now.
Yeah, 0 of them I have faith and confidence in. It's the tight ends, it's the running back, and I'm kind of with you. I have a little bit of a blind spot on Miles Sanders just at his current price, but it's not to say I won't get him because I think he is probably the biggest playmaker in this offense. We'll see. I mean, Deshaun Jackson is the easily overlooked guy who's dirt cheap, best ball fodder for me. Love it. Mm-hmm. At this point in the 14th round, taking a best ball flyer in Alshon Jeffrey when I feel like I have 5 guys ahead of him that can get the job done too. I know. He's old. He hates Carson Wentz. All these things.
Hey, I've done it too, though, so I get it. I've made the same pick.
It's more about the price for me and what the potential roles are. And for the rest of them, I don't trust any of their roles, and that's the problem. I want to see some kind of path to workload, and I don't necessarily see that with J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. I don't necessarily see that with Rager. Assuming Jeffrey and Jackson are healthy, those are the kind of guys that I think that I'd understand the roles. Otherwise, it's going to be a developing situation. I don't know if I want to draft developing situations. I'd rather pick them up on free agents, which may means I miss out on these guys. And kudos to those who come out ahead for beating me to the punch.
I will say that if one thing has happened this offseason that I think is good, I think I've been cured of my J.J. Arcega-Whiteside deep sleeper hopes. I planted that flag last year. It obviously didn't work out. And at the start of this offseason, I thought maybe there's a chance. And then, they draft Rager, Alshon Jeffrey comes back, Deshaun Jackson's supposed to be healthy. And I was like, okay, I think I'm over that now. I think I've been cured. Long, how worried are you about Zach Ertz? I mean, every time you talk about Zach Ertz, somebody's going to pop up and shout the name Dallas Goedert. Is that overblown? Is that a real concern we should have?
I think it's a real concern. Last year, they both had the exact same consistency rating of 67%. And Goddard is being drafted, 5, 6, 7 rounds later. So, if you want to wait, as you guys were talking about, waiting for the Jonnu Smiths and, the later tight ends, Dallas Goedert is going in rounds, 10, at least in double digits, 10, 11, 12. And so again, with the matching consistency from last year, I'm just not, I don't have a single share of Zach Ertz, and I doubt if I will, because I'm kind of like what you guys are talking, where I'm either going Kelsey, Kittle, or I am doing a lot of Ingram and Hunter Henry. Is those mid-tier guys, because I feel I have the confidence in their consistency, because it's always been there in the past. It's just a question of staying healthy. But I certainly have no problem if I missed out even on those 2 guys going with Goddard a little bit later. So no, I'm not. I'm just not buying into Ertz this year.
I think that's fair. Right. Yeah, I mean, I guess my thought is with Goddard is that he's not going to be great for fantasy, but I say this about a lot of guys, right? Those guys who aren't great for fantasy, but they do just enough to wreck somebody else's year. and that's kind of where I'm falling on Dallas Goedert. Like, I don't think he's going to be productive enough that I would consider having him on my roster, but he's going to do just enough that he makes me nervous about Zach Ertz. So,
right.
All right, let's finish up this round with the Washington football team, which, by the way, have you guys gotten your WFT gear? Like, I feel like you should get it just because it'll be a collector's item.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, right.
Exactly. I feel like if I get it, I'm just buying into the whole thing where this is just all a merchandising thing to make a bunch of extra money. So I don't know.
I mean, you're not wrong. Is what it is. So whatever. Well, I mean, look, people will buy the shirts. I'm sure the WFT, if things go sideways, will end up easily becoming WTF. And we'll all have a good laugh. But Harris, I'll start with you here. After Terry McLaurin, is there a pass catcher in this offense that you like, that you trust, that you believe in at all?
No. That being the case, I'll spend the last round pick on Steven Sims based on that narrow band we saw late last year. 20 passes, 230 yards, 4 touchdowns over the last 4 games. I thought was a good sign, but that's all there is. And I realize these other guys are there, and maybe they'll do some. Kelvin Harmon was pretty heavily targeted. Antonio Gandy Golden is a guy that comes in as different, and those are guys that usually appeal to me, the different piece than what they have. And Trey Quinn, I know, has generated considerable buzz at various times, and none of it interests me. None of it.
I wrote Art Monk.
Go ahead.
I wrote Art Monk.
Oh, I mean, look, I'll take some shares of Ricky Sanders if I could.
That'll work too. Yeah,
something like that.
Yeah, it depends on, and Antonio Gibson, depending on what he's listed as. I know there are some platforms where he's listed as wide receiver. Even there, it's kind of hard for me to get really interested because honestly, I don't know what the roles are. I mean, new coaching staff coming in adds a layer of difficulty to all these calculations for me. And so I'm going to go with the more proven commodities here. And even at that, it better be at the damn good price.
Yeah, well, I've taken a couple of late stabs at Gibson. And I think because I feel like his path to production is going to be more as a receiver because they've got a lot of running backs there. And I know there's some question marks in that backfield, which brings me to my next question for you, Bob Long. How do you feel about Darius Guice? He's gotten the clean bill of health. He says he's ready to go. He's had a couple of major knee injuries already in his young football career. How are we feeling about him right now?
Well, I have to be like Bob Harrison to say, everybody's going to get hurt. So you can't take that into consideration. You just have to go forward and say, this kid has the talent. He's got the ability to make things happen. He's proven that in the short periods of time that we've seen him play. And from that standpoint alone, he's a nice flyer late in your draft. And I have no problem drafting him. Like you said, it's just, he's got to stay healthy. And if we assume he's not going to get hurt, then I'm buying.
I know. I'd love for guys to just sign a waiver to be like, hey, Marcus, I'm not going to get hurt.
He's I like that he knows it. He even said he's the best practice player in the NFL right now, and he's got to prove it on the field. The narrow bands that we've seen on the field have been so impressive. And, the pedigree he came in with and the body of production in college also, demonstrated a lot. So and again, I've been on this program before, as you said, my smoking jacket hangs over there. I'm old and I'm mean, but mostly I'm cheap. And for a guy that might come in and be a true feature back, getting into that 7th round or whatever is really appealing to me.
Yeah, and I think that's the big upside, right? I mean, because of where he's coming off the board, you can take that swing at him, and chances are you have at least one, possibly 2 other running backs ahead of him on your roster, so the risk is lessened. So I totally get that. You talk about narrow bands, Bob Harris, and we saw kind of a narrowish band, I guess, of Dwayne Haskins. I don't think anybody's going to make the reach that you could have him in redraft leagues. But if you're talking dynasty, if you're talking sort of the long view on Dwayne Haskins, do you feel like there is something worth investing in there?
Yes, he has a starting job for now, and even that's not very secure. That's kind of what I'm investing in at that level in dynasty. For full disclosure here, I'm in a 2-quarterback dynasty league with a bunch of industry people, and I'll say it here because we've talked about it on various pods. But Matthew Berry and I have been he's been trying to get Haskins away from me in a trade, and we've been working on this for over a year. And we just see the values differently. And in a 2-quarterback league, I think he's a valuable asset. Beyond that, he's just a developmental hope, right? And I do think we saw some improvement down the stretch last year that maybe gives you reasons for optimism. But the fact that the new coaching staff went out and brought in a guy, Kyle Allen, that they, have some understanding, some feel for, and understands the system is a bit of a concern. So, don't overpay. which means don't pay anything. If you get him for essentially free, go ahead and get him. And I think that's where I'm at with him.
I love you negotiating with Matthew Berry through the media. It's like a real NFL
We've
trade
been at this for
negotiation.
literally over a year. I mean, like there'll be little text flurries, and we just can't seem to agree on the value.
Oh man, that's hilarious. Also, I feel like if you're Ron Rivera, because they went and they get Kyle Allen, and then I feel like it was maybe a few days or a week later that Cam Newton was released. If you're Ron Rivera, you sort of like kicking yourself, like, wait, like I could have had my other quarterback and brought him in here. Or maybe they just really believe in Haskins that much. I don't know.
I don't think so.
Yeah, look, I'm trying to be positive. I'm trying to turn over a new leaf here. Let's do some kind of superlatives around the NFC East. Some of the top, biggest, best, most, whatevers that you guys foresee, and I'll get one from each of you. I'll start with you, Bob Lung. Who is going to be the top scoring fantasy receiver in the NFC East? I know we talked about Amari Cooper. You talked about his consistency or lack thereof. Is it easy to say that it will be him, or is there somebody else?
No, in fact, I'm going to go with his teammate, and we already talked about him earlier, Michael Gallup. Okay. Michael Gallup doesn't miss those games, and you just, again, annualize out, extrapolate out his fantasy points that he earned per game last year. He would only been 3 points behind Amari Cooper. So if he kicks it up a notch and Amari even stays where he is, I think Gallup can take over, and I think he can be the top scoring receiver in the NFC East.
Do you concur, Mr. Harris?
I'm gonna stick with Cooper, but it's not a bad argument by long.
All right. I'm going to kind of call a small audible here on my next one. I said top scoring NFC East running back not named Saquon, but then I realized that Ezekiel Elliott is there, and he very easily could be that guy. So let's
take my answer. Damn it.
So let's do that. So obviously you say all right. So let's take Zeke and Saquon out of it, right? Okay. Like that leaves a couple guys in Philly, that leaves a couple guys in Washington. Who is the next then after the Saquon Zeke division is all gone, guys?
I'd like to be super edgy and say Darius Geis, but I have a job and I should probably do it responsibly. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I mean, I have to go with Miles Sanders too. Like I said, I think he easily makes top 12.
Yeah, that was one of those. I was like, in a fog when I was writing this rundown, and just completely like, I wrote that and I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah, I thought that too. I'm like,
I was.
All right, fine.
I'm glad I caught that now before this makes it out to the internet and everybody's like, what the heck is wrong with
Twitter? Would have loved it.
Oh, yeah. They would have absolutely killed me for it. Bob Long, who is the biggest, or maybe there are multiple, your biggest sleepers coming out of the NFC East this year?
Well, I hate to bring it up again, but I'm gonna put Golden Tate. I mean, I think that again, most people forgot about him. He's the old guy. He's the veteran. Nobody cares. He's going in double-digit rounds from drafting purposes. I think by the end of the year, you're going to see him up there. Again, he'll have his moments where he might have a dud or two, but I think he's going to be a very solid. Could easily make top 36 in total points.
All right, Harris.
We're redefining sleepers. I'd like to be edgy again, say Devonta Freeman, but no. I'm gonna just stick with Daniel Jones. Look, I think he's being drafted late enough that he still qualifies for a sleeper. I mean, everyone knows him. And, the whole sleeper thing, and for people who are watching this pod, is great values, and he's still a great value. There are guys I like a lot of it. I mean, if we were talking about sleepers, I would say Steven Sims is a guy for me. It's a sleeper, maybe a guy you throw that last round dart at in a best ball with hopes of getting a little production. But the flag has been planted for me. It's all Daniel Jones all day long.
Yeah,
I know it's a tough schedule, everybody. Leave me alone, Twitter.
I know that, if you ask 10 different people their definition of a sleeper, you'll probably get 10 different answers. I know it's sort of nebulous, but we all have content to produce, so here we are. Last one, and Harris, I'll start with you here. The most overdrafted player or players in the NFC East, you think?
I think Amari Cooper is tops of that list for me. Evan Ingram's on that list for me. I still have shares of Zach Ertz, but I'm buying him in the 5th round or so. I think that's still relative value. But if you're still pushing that 3rd round Zach Ertz thing, no, thank you, please.
Bob Lung, what are your thoughts?
I mean, obviously, I was all in on Cooper too. If I had to throw out a second one, though, as much as I talk about the ceiling for Miles Sanders, I'm kind of with you, Marcus, on the Doug Peterson knows how to screw this up. He kind of, whether it's Adam Gase or Nagy or whoever, they get these top running backs and they kind of screw with them and mess with them. And then fantasy wise, we yell angry words. But I just did Pros versus Joe's draft last 2 nights ago. It was the first one of the year, and Miles Sanders went 8 overall. Wow. That was a little high for me, and so maybe we could put Miles Sanders in that conversation. But again, he certainly has ability. It's the question: does Doug Peterson let him do it? So
right, yeah, and I think that's a thing that I know I struggle with. It's ability is great, opportunity is like you can be the most talented guy in the world, but if for whatever reason you're not getting on the field or you're not getting the football, it doesn't really matter. All right, let's finish this out with some either ors. A couple of them will be fantasy related. A couple of them are just for fun. You don't need any long, in-depth analysis, and you can use whatever criteria to pick one of these categories that you like. So I'll start with Bob Lung. CeeDee Lamb or Jalen Reagor?
I got to go with Jalen Reagor. I think that if CeeDee Lamb was in a different team where he was more of a focus, he got more opportunity than being jammed in with, the boys in Dallas. I think I would pick him, but I'm going to go Jalen Reagor just because he has more opportunity to see the ball and be a part of that offense in Philadelphia.
All right. Bob Harris.
I'll take the opposite direction. By the way, I mean, you could throw Lamb on that list of overdrafted right now because, I mean, he's only going about 4 receivers after Michael Gallup, right? I mean, people are buying into this, but I'll take him for the big playability. And even if he doesn't have a really, a complete role or a frontline role, coming in as a third receiver, just based on his big playability, because I don't know what Reagor's role is. I honestly don't. And if he comes out and does great things, and I know a lot of people really believe in him, more power to him. I would just rather go with something I have a little better understanding of.
All right. Let's go sort of like handcuffs, a little bit deeper here. Start with Bob Harris. Tony Pollard or Boston Scott?
It's been Boston Scott for me because I have great faith in Zeke Elliott's ability to hold up through the season, as well as maybe a little standalone value for Scott. I think you have a little more of that without depending on an injury.
Exactly. Right. Yeah, and I'd say the same thing just because, like you said, Doug Peterson likes to bring in those guys a few, 10, 12 times a game, and Boston Scott's going to get that opportunity. Pollard will rarely see the field unless Zeke's hurt.
Boston Scott, who was the 1.01 in drafts of players whose names sound like sports talk radio callers. We're going out to line 3 to Boston Scott. All right, Twizzlers or Red Vines, Bob Lung?
Twizzlers, because I don't even know if they sell Red Vines around here. Is that a special part of the United States?
I didn't know it was regional. I mean, I here in California I didn't think it was regional. I thought
I don't ever remember seeing a bag that says Red Vines in the Midwest. Like I see Twizzlers everywhere.
It's more of a movie theater thing, right?
Bag of Red Vines.
I know here, I think I can walk into a 7-Eleven and get a pack of Red Vines if I really wanted to. I didn't realize it was regional like that.
I will go look the next time I'm out, but I don't ever remember seeing a choice of Twizzlers and Red Vines were side by side. It were Twizzlers and always Twizzlers. So,
all right,
Twizzlers because of that.
do they have Red Vines in New Mexico, Bob Harris?
I'm pretty sure they do. I don't eat the candy, but when I did, I was good with either of those things, man. Eat them all day long. And it didn't really. The brand wasn't a thing, man. They were red and they were long and they were chewy, and that was it. So I'm good
all
with
right.
either. By the way,
so we'll finish out
Boston Scott briefly.
Yeah.
I go with him, even though I have a general theory in life: never trust a man whose first name is a place.
Huh. I'm gonna have to after we're done here, I'm gonna have to start digging into that and looking this up. Interesting. Okay. Last one. Steak or chicken, Bob Harris? I know you have gotten svelte.
I'm plant-based eater now, so it's been 4 years since I've eaten either steak or chicken. But at some point here, this whole plant-based thing is going to lead me to massive quantities of both steak and chicken, and I'll eat them both at the same time. First fork will be steak, second fork will be chicken. I love them both, man. If I was still eating the meat, it would be a really close call. It would probably be a little more chicken because I tend to be a little healthier, but man, there's nothing the matter with steak, people.
I completely agree. I mean, Bob Lung, I know you are in the Midwest where steak is big. Is that going to influence your decision here?
No, it's not. Well, it's not. So I love chicken as much as I love steak. I'm with Bob Harris on that. But I always, when you have to make that decision, I don't remember hardly ever eating a piece of chicken where I literally had some kind of orgasmic response. I've had steak where I've like eaten it, went, oh my gosh, that's amazing. That's why you got to go steak.
I think that's fair. No, I think it's completely fair. Plus, look, I tend to, like, when I cook at home, I tend to cook more chicken. So like when I go out, then I am like, I'll have somebody else make me a nice steak. So I think that's totally fair. Guys, I have enjoyed this conversation. Bob Harris, you've been on this show frequently. We talk frequently. Bob Long, I know, like I said, we won't be able to see each other in person, but I've enjoyed having you here.
Thank you. Honored to be here.
Bob Lung, I'll start with you. Give folks a look at where you are, where they can find your work, what you're up to nowadays.
Appreciate it. So, as Marcus said earlier in the show, Big Guy Fantasy Sports is the website. But if you're, I put out this nice little magazine called the Fantasy Football Consistency Guide, and every year Bob Harris and I get nominated for best publication with his football diehards. And one year I win, one year he wins, but he wins more often. But I appreciate it. You go out to Amazon and you can get it there. You can then get the coupon code from the book and come and get the VIP access. You can put in your own scoring method into our consistency report tool. Gives you the most consistent players in your league and your scoring system on the website. We update that all year so we can help show you how important it is to have consistency on your teams and your players, and that'll help you out. And of course, you can find me on Twitter at Bob_Lung. And once again, Marcus, thank you for having me. Always an honor to even share with Mr. Harris. So thanks again for having me. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Bob Harris, I know a lot of folks who follow us follow you, but for folks who don't, where can they find you?
You can find me at footballdiehards.com, the website, at footballdiehard on Twitter. Magazines this year. Weird year, so we cut back, but we're doing our 31st edition of the Fantasy Football Pro Forecast. Will be on newsstands August 1st, featuring one Marcas Grant in a prominent role, feature articles, experts polls, etc. As the same with the Football Diehards magazine, 20th anniversary edition, also will be out August 1st. You can buy those at whatever newsstands are around you, or the virtual newsstand called footballdiehards.com. And also you can hear me on the SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio damn near every day, so it's almost hard to escape me. I'm sorry about that, everybody.
Yeah, you're doing a show with Mike Dempsey, and then you're doing a show with our pal Michael Fabiano.
Yep. Nice.
You guys over there at Fantasy Dirt. Yeah, and if you want to read my stream of consciousness about running back committees, go pick up the magazine. You can scratch your head and be confused as to what I was doing when I sat up late writing that one night. So there you go. That is it. We are done. We appreciate you listening and downloading and watching the videos as always. You know the drill. Tell two friends to tell two friends. Rate, review, and remember, never go to a doctor whose office plants have died. Take care of yourselves, wear a mask, and we'll see you next week.